How are you, sir?
How are you,
See,
sir?
you like that in English, right?
Ah, that's right. We're breaking into a new special edition of the Prosperando Show today. We are coming to you from the Los Radio Studio. See, I'm even getting confused on how to pronounce stuff.
It's okay. It's singular. As long as we say singular, it's okay.
Los Radio.
There you go.
There you go. My name is Fabian, and I'm here with my co-host, Tanya. Hi, Tanya.
Hello, Fabian. How are you?
Special edition today.
Yes.
In English.
Yes.
It's the first time we do. It's the first time.
Yes.
So you came into the podcast and already you're changing stuff, huh?
That's how it's going to go.
I know Tanya.
Oh, and you hear that voice in the background. Actually, Leo, we have a special guest today. You know us. We like to.
I love surprises, bro.
We love surprises, and yes, we like to bring in special guests from time to time to the show. I think it adds a certain level of dynamics to the show. I think a lot of times we talk about finances and we talk about this topic, but I think when we get to hear it from somebody else, it kind of resonates a little more. What do you think?
Absolutely. I'm excited about this guest.
Yes.
So we've been talking about, what the show is about, right? So it's about telling stories about prospering. How do you prosper in this country? So I said, you got to meet my friend Mohammad. I've known Mohammad for a long, long time. And what I can say is that from the moment I met him, he was really young. How old are you, 21?
Probably 22, maybe 22, 23.
Yes, 2001, and we were both very young, but my goodness, so...
Now I know how old you are. No, okay.
It was end of
Right.
one.
So very, very motivated. But Mo knew he was going to be successful. You could just kind of see it in him. So it was really interesting to kind of see that trajectory just happen over a lifetime. And
Not without downfalls, obviously, like everybody else.
Well,
We
that's
both
how
have our
we're
ups
gonna-
and downs.
that's what we're going to talk about.
That's what we want to discuss, right? We want to get to find out a little bit about your story and your struggles and your successes,
Sure.
right? Share that with us. And obviously, we just kind of, we felt at home with you and we felt at ease right away. And we started talking without really properly introducing you. So would you share with us your name?
Mohammad Hadla.
How do you say your last name?
Hadla.
Hadla. Okay. So Mohammad Hadla, where are you from originally?
I was born in Beirut, Lebanon,
Oh, okay, Lebanon. And then you came here after or
1984.
1984. So you were how old?
5.5 years old.
Wow.
Similar story to, well, no, you were
I was a year and a half.
a year and a half. Okay, I was 11 when I came here.
I was 9.
There you go.
Aw.
Which country?
Argentina.
Nice.
So
I
we-
still have to go visit.
United Nations here, right?
Pretty much.
The one thing that I've always found that unites us all, right? We all speak a different native language, right? And different native dialect, in Leo's case. Although Leo would say that's his own language. But anyway.
Yeah, it is. It's sha.
But I think what unites us all immigrants or children of immigrants is that, we have that innate in us, that quest or that desire
That
to
drive.
prosper, that drive. Thank you. That's a perfect word.
That's why I'm here.
Yeah, there you go. To grow, right? And regardless of whether or not we speak the common language, I think that commonality is always about that desire to get ahead in life.
Correct.
So tell us a little bit about how you got started here. What drove? What do you think is what drives Mo? Can I call you Mo?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I have a friend named Mohammed. I call him Mo all the time. So
I've been called worse things.
that drives Mo on his everyday activities towards success.
It's interesting. To put it all in one sentence would be a little tough, right? But I think it's a
You
combination.
could do
of-
it in two.
It's a combination of things. I think having a sense of purpose is part of what drives a person every day, right? If you don't have that, it kind of gets harder to get out of bed. And I think that has a lot to do with even mental health sometimes, right? And for me, I call myself a problem solver,
Okay.
and that's really what drives my daily routine in terms of what I do for my clients,
Okay.
friends and family sometimes, but in terms of for business, that's really what got me to where I've gotten to. And it's all about taking different challenges that maybe my clients have. How can I get it done for them, make their life better? As a result of solving those matters, it makes my life better. It allows me to make my income, and it allows me to help my family. And then it also allows me to go on vacation, and it allows me to expand my horizons. And taste the different foods of the world from these vacations. So just kind of continuing that routine is what I found really the simple formula of allowing myself to continue to grow incrementally through the years.
So finding that drive, I guess, that sense of purpose is what pushes you, what propels you to keep going forward. Now, interesting in your description of yourself, and this is something that I find we as men tend to do often, right? We describe ourselves, and then we describe immediately what we do, right? It's not so common for women. I don't know. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not a woman, so I don't know.
I've never noticed that.
Yeah, but somebody actually told me that years ago. They said, if every time you ask a guy something, he immediately will tell you like one or two things about themselves, and then they go into work, right? Because we define ourselves by the activities that we do on a daily basis,
Which most of the time of the day is taken out of the work. So.
Right. Whereas in that conversation, that same person told me, usually women have a tendency to define themselves by their family. And so correct me if I'm wrong.
I think that falls in line with what you just said before, which is purpose, right? So a man feels his purpose in what he does. A woman feels her purpose in, I guess, in her, not that men don't, but our life is kind of our nature, right? So it's an extension of us. That's our first thought.
Yeah.
That's the mother in us, right?
Yeah, I guess we are not that good.
I think it can all be relative to the role the person's playing that
at that moment.
During that moment in their life or that day. So I'm sure there'll be a woman that'll come in here and talk about her business prowess as well, and anything else that goes from there. And then maybe somebody that might be more involved as a man in family matters.
Sure.
Over taking more of their time regarding over their business.
Right.
Would be first. But I think what unfortunately in life you don't really get to grow and have the nice things or even have the essentials without being able to make a living, right? So, and that's kind of what identifies us as what we do every day.
So following that line of I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say, I think maybe it's just tradition.
Yeah.
Traditionally, that may be a true statement. I think you're completely right. I think women today are very different, so are men. So the roles are changing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, we talked a little bit about the drive, which is what connects us all immigrants together. But I think also tradition has a lot to do with that, right? Because we as immigrants, not only do we have the traditions that we're learning and picking up here, but we also inherit that tradition or those customs
Correct.
from our family, right? But going back a little bit to what we were saying before, you started talking about business. What is it that you do for a living, if you don't mind sharing with us?
Commercial real estate mortgage, I guess, advisor, you can call it.
Okay.
But my journey kind of turns me into more of like an owner representative, and I don't necessarily just only get the loan for the client. Obviously that's what I do on a daily basis. They come to me, they may have the land, the approvals, the money, but not always the wherewithal to put it together and go to a bank and get the actual financing for their construction loans, for example.
Okay.
So they'll come to me with pieces of what they have in their vision, and I'll put it together in different aspects, the finances of the client, the finances of their project, and knock on doors of banks that I know have the appetite for such an item. And from there, basically, I take care of, once we get the term sheet and the bank shows the interest to move forward, I take care of the underwriting aspect as well on behalf of the client. So my clients almost never speak to the banks. They just show up and sign.
That's good.
Yeah.
I think Mohammad is being very modest.
Okay,
So
okay.
I think if I can kind of identify the way that I've seen it. So he started as a realtor many years ago.
Okay.
Then he went into becoming a loan officer for residential. and then he did commercial lending. But right now, what he's doing is, I think it's pretty amazing what you're doing.
Appreciate that.
Well, the lending that he does, he simplified it very, very, very well. But he's actually financing big projects, developing projects. So, his clients are people that are like, oh, I want to get 100 doors. Like, okay, I'll help you get 100 doors.
Yeah.
Find the land, help him with the getting the permits, getting everything together. And like he said, the client barely ever speaks to the bank, but he's putting this all together. It's a huge project.
So you have large portfolio clients.
It's gotten to that point. I've actually helped them build their portfolios. So they may be coming to me, maybe they have a bunch of 2 families and now they want to move to a 30, 40 unit. And that doesn't, just having the land and the money doesn't mean the bank's ready to give it to you.
No.
You got to have the full story together. Who's your general contractor? Who's your engineer? Who's your architect? Are the plans ready? Are the permits ready? Is the demolition permit ready, but then not the actual plans to the permits for the footing and foundation to get started? These things can get stalled, And there's a lot of challenges along the road, budget issues, also requisition. So requisition is when they actually get the loan and then it's time for the phase funding. That's a whole nother aspect post-closing that I stay involved the next 2 years with the client. So I don't just collect my fee and say, have a nice day and good luck, and I'll see you at the party when the building's finished. I'm involved the rest of the ride.
Okay. So it's a long-term commitment that you have with your
Correct.
clients. And I'm sure, they're appreciative of what you're doing for them. Let me ask you this. How did you get started in that line of work? It sounds very interesting to me.
So I'm going to backtrack a little bit because it's about like drive and where we got, I came to this country during the Civil War.
Okay.
And during that time, my father was really on his own success ride in Lebanon. Even throughout the turmoil of a civil war, my father only had a second-grade education.
Okay.
And he grew up working, in the garment district in Lebanon. And, by the time he was 18, he was able to open up a little shop. And by the time he was in his early 20s, he was importing women's clothing from all over Europe and kind of being one of the trendsetters and bringing fashion into Lebanon as one of the pioneers. You might not see that now when you see it. Sometimes when I got to remind him to get back to his fashion-y sense of self. He got a little lazy for a couple of years, but now he's taking it. Now he's taking it to another level. So we got him all geared up. But watching him, I remember even as a child, and even in my early stages before I even came to this country, I remember just there was like a sense of energy around his success drive and combination of that and taking care of family. So he was the leader of his family, had a lot of siblings. It was always some form of struggle that was going on. And he was there financially for everybody. And come to the U.S., we kind of had to start off from scratch. He left the company for his family, but the war kind of swallowed it up. And what I remember about my father is failure is not an option, right? And you may be going through a struggle. There's a decline. You might hit the ground, but you got to keep going.
Right.
And one thing I loved about him, watching him, because you learn from your parents, right? It wasn't just that he continued helping his family back home when we came here and we almost had nothing. He was also helping out my mom's family. So he was helping out his in-laws back home from here while we were still trying to figure out what we're doing over here, right? So he had his journeys. Started out with just working at a supermarket. Now, this was an international businessman that went straight to working in the business in a supermarket for a few months, and then selling coffee at the coffee stand down by Wall Street for a while. And he had like 500 daily clients that he knew. By the time he was done, he already had known what everyone drank.
Oh, wow.
How many sugars, how much milk. So that kind of detail growing up and watching a fortitude and perseverance is kind of what I apply to everything in my life. And it kind of allows you to take the gut punches and not let it swallow you.
Right.
But, let the dent hit, but let it fix your character up, maybe strengthen your character. Don't take life personal. And, we're all significantly insignificant. We're going to turn into dust one day, right? So our pains, our sorrows, and our happiness is going to be nothing but a memory, a frequency that's floating in the air. So try not to take every matter so serious and always try to come back and try to improve or leverage even a loss into a gain. That's kind of been what I've been doing my whole life. So
That's a lot.
Yeah.
You just unpackaged a lot.
He actually said, you said dust in the wind or something like
frequency in the wind, right?
And I remember this song that I listen from time to time called Dust in the Wind. And if you hear the lyrics to that song, right, it humbles you. And then you're like, yeah, that's who we are. We're dust in the wind. Not that you want to look at life that way, but from time to time you need to, right? You need to kind of take a step back and say, okay.
It's not to lower the significance of who we are as humans, but it's to lower the significance of the impact of things.
Right.
So it doesn't swallow you up and depress you, freeze you up. We all go through those moments where we question everything that we do. Sometimes it's on a daily basis, right? The markets come and attack us even after you get somewhere that you felt you've hit a new platform, and then politics and the markets come back and attack that, right? And then there's natural disasters that come and attack that, right? So, but if the world was able to get to this point through hundreds and thousands and millions of years through all their struggles, we're not reinventing it, so we just have to be able to pick up, thank God that we're still alive and breathing and we have our mind and sanity, and keep building it up from there. So
maybe that's a little bit of the commonality that we have as immigrants, right? Is that we come with maybe had some comforts, but then we come here and we start over. Those that do come here and start over, and we understand struggle, we understand need, we understand also that it comes and goes. So it makes that perseverance a little bit maybe easier, and definitely commonality. It's that drive, I think, that the immigrant has, is that it's going to be okay. I've seen worse.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Been the Civil War, so you're not going to really intimidate me with anything else.
That's pretty amazing. Yeah. What does that mean when you say Civil War? Like, you've actually seen...
Yeah.
Wow.
I've seen the damages and the bombings and all that wonderful... ridiculous things that took place. But it's interesting because I still have great memories during that time too. So you kind of get numb to it. People get numb to these things. So I still remember, even before coming to this country, I know I was 5.5, but I remember my 4th birthday. And I remember all my aunts and uncles and cousins coming over our apartment and wishing me happy birthday and having good times and having great times with my uncles throughout the first couple of years of my life. And those memories are still there. Yeah. So I didn't come here thinking like life is rough, life is tough. Like, there was always happiness above it all, one way or another.
And do you think that by you looking at life that way forged you into what you are today?
Yeah, I think there's always we get molded, right, from our experiences and then how we overcome these things. But I always think that there's always an opportunity to continue molding yourself, right? So version A, version B throughout your life. And I really kind of, it's easier said than done, but I try not to get caught up in any moments, especially at this point in my life. Maybe when I was younger, it was easier to get caught up for a longer period of time. Right. But now it doesn't matter what it is. I can't be caught up in it more than 10, 15 minutes. I got a lot of things going on, a lot of people relying on me from family to business, and the show must go on. Right.
Interesting that you say that you got a lot of going on and family, business. In the description that Tanya put in for whom you are, she put guardian of family, caring for mom, dad, and siblings.
Yeah.
So you want to elaborate a little bit more as to what that means, because I think it's an excellent description. But I'm curious to hear it from you.
Well, sorry, still getting used to being in the studio. Again, watching my father being a caretaker of everybody, and there's a certain limit that my dad was able to get to once we got here. And he put in a lot of hours, 60 hours, 70 hours. And I remember there was a time in early high school days where he was a livery driver, where that's when you're driving for companies, picking up executives and high-end positions. And the only time I knew my dad left or came home was hearing the garage door opener in bed, right? And I remember in high school one time I was walking around and I was like, I don't remember the garage door opening or closing. So it was stuck in my head. And then that day, they let us out early. It was like a snow day. And I remember as I'm walking down the hill to get to my parents' house, I made a turn. And from top of the hill, I saw my father's car in the driveway, and the front end of the car was like an accordion.
Oh.
Oh wow.
It was smashed up.
Oh.
And my worst fear came true. He fell asleep at the wheel,
Oh.
coming home from work. Where? 5 blocks away from home.
Oh my God.
Right? So that was the longest walk down to go 11 houses down. It felt like it took me 5 days because I didn't know if he was okay, alive, or whatever. That just looked like a bad accident. And I was like walking like literally 1 step per hour. That's how it felt until I got to the door. And I saw him on the couch, and he had an ice pack on his thigh, and, at least he's okay overall. And, this man sacrificed everything for us. I mean, I look at his journey of life, and he was someone that always had a chance to be selfish, but he always chose to be selfless. And watching that through the time, like this person gave me all the tools, the lessons, and paid his dues. Him and my mom paid their dues. My mom, was taking care of raising 6 kids while my dad was putting his 70 hours at the house. And to me, they were both equally as important.
Sure.
It wasn't just about my dad, bringing in the money. My mom was doing her part with raising us and teaching us, our manners and, our temperaments and, just also all the different chores and responsibilities, right? I have a pretty clean apartment for a single guy if you want to check it out. So as I got older, I felt it was my responsibility to reciprocate as soon as I can. And right out of college, I had a psych major and a bio minor. I graduated in 2001. That's when the economy was already busting up a little bit. The NASDAQ crashed. I think the job that I had lined up out of college was already gone before I even graduated. And I took a job with a marketing company. It was for Takasago Inc. Takasago had, I think, Lever back then, all these different detergents and different brands.
Okay.
And it was $25 an hour, which was maybe mounting up to about $50,000 a year salary. And
It was a lot back then.
Yeah.
I mean, a nice
But I was
amount.
already getting a feel that that's not really how I
Yeah.
want to go about life. And then they made a big fuss when I asked for a day off for my sister's graduation. And that's when I knew that I'm not going to really have a boss the rest of my life. Like that moment, I was like, I'm not going to spend the rest of my life asking permission to do things. If I need to go see, if I want to take a day off, or if I want to go see something or an emergency for a family member, or in the future, if I have a kid, I don't want to ask permission to go see the kid's game. Right?
Sure.
So from that moment on, I immediately wanted to remain in the entrepreneurial mind. I did get my real estate license. My dad's friend was always on me to get it. I feel like what I learned in college regarding, just structure and even psychology is even though I'm not in it as an industry, I think it's a big part of what keeps me going and not getting too caught up in moments and giving people the chance, for giving myself a chance to understand people, to give them a chance,
Right.
so that I'm not caught up in their blunders or their, crossing the lines or maybe doing something that might disappoint me. So instead of it growing in my head and having a negative view, I may want to take a moment to understand where that person's root of issue came from and give it a chance to allow some form of peace and harmony to continue. During that time, I did get my license. Then we had 9/11.
No.
And I was like, shit, I don't think I'm going to be able to sell any houses. I don't think anyone's going to be busy selling houses right now, So
Crazy, right?
I had passed the state test, the school test. The state test was scheduled after 9/11. So I took the test anyway, went into the real estate office, and it was actually Tanya's ex-husband and business partner at the time. Ted walked in and was talking to everyone about mortgages. And I remember my father needed to refinance the house. And I was like, I like the way this guy's approaching, his sales pitch. Whereas a lot of other mortgage loan officers on the residential end were a little bit too showy, and I wasn't impressed by it. So I asked them to do the refinance for my family's home. And during that process, I learned about the financing aspect of real estate. And I learned, actually, just backtrack a little bit. The first day I walked in the office, once I did get my license, there was a stack of contracts on the desk, and the accountant, I was like, what are these? He's like, oh, these are deals that didn't go through because they didn't get the financing. So it just registered in my head. I was like, okay, it's not just the cash, it's the loan. Otherwise, there's no horsepower for pushing real estate through. So I understood that pretty quickly. And during the refinance process, I was just asking questions, taking notes, and I took a liking to it. To me, I liked it a lot more than showing the houses, and I liked it a lot more than being, comparing which house had a nicer bathroom and which house had a nicer kitchen. We're not going to, deconstruct to construct to sell a property. I was like, there's other people that have the temperament for it. We'll leave that for them. I kept my license active even till now, but I really liked the mortgage business. And at that point, I learned more. I met Tanya. Tanya was a big part of actually teaching me the structures and fundamentals of underwriting and structuring a file. And I remember after my first closing, I got licensed with them. And after my first closing, it took me back to a memory in college where after financial aid, student loan, there was a couple $1,000s refund check. And now I just got a refund check size of a check from closing a loan. And I'm like, how many of these can I do per year? And from there, I just kind of took, and in the beginning, what I was doing was, we had banks that were doing like alternative financing, so it wasn't a cookie cutter scenario. So I actually learned their structures and ran back to the office's accounting, and I was like, connect me to all the real estate agents of the contracts that died recently. And we resurrected about 4 or 5 of those deals.
Oh, nice.
And got them closed, got some checks out of it, made money for the agents on deals that thought they were dead. And I would say within a year of that, I probably opened up a branch office under Consumers Choice Mortgage Services, which was Tanya's company. And I started running a branch office. I was in my early 20s. I was hiring people my age, older than me, and teaching them what she taught me. I was teaching them right away. So there's about maybe 20 people today that I taught mortgage business to that are all making about $100,000 to $250,000 per year. So that's a nice, proud moment.
Sure, you get to have an impact not just on your pocket, but helping others.
Correct.
So
I think that's the part that I think kind of drove me to saying you got to meet Mo, because what I like is that you'll take something, but it's seed for growth. Yeah. It's always seed for growth. It's not like, okay, I'm going to take this, I'm going to make as much as I can.
Right.
I could have.
You could have.
It could have made a lot of money if I didn't teach people that back then.
But
that took a lot of time.
That was what you learned from your dad. You said, there were moments to be selfish, right? But he chose not to. And what I really love seeing now is I had an opportunity to meet his family as well and his sisters when they were young. And he grew his business, and now he grew extensions of businesses, and now his family has businesses. So you've done that so many times with either your loan officers when you had your branch, and you've continued to do that. And I think that's pretty impressive. And I think that's one of the things that I think, as somebody coming into this country and being new, it's important to not just get caught up in your growth, right? But if you can make an impact, your growth can multiply, and then you're really doing something to be spoken for, right?
I'm not always in a hurry to make money. It's crazy. Yeah. It's like I know I need to,
right?
And I know I have goals and I need to reach them, but I'm not always in a hurry to chase that check. And at the time, I was like, you know what? If I can learn to teach people and grow sideways before I move forward and grow in that direction, instead of it being one line, let it be a line of 100 people growing with me. So I like that idea. I like to see more people doing well. I love to see people. I'm not the kind of person that wants to do well and sit by himself. I want my surroundings to be doing well. I want my clients to be doing well. If everybody's doing well, I'm doing well, one way or another.
Would you say that that's something that maybe was taught to you, or would you say that's something that you learned?
I think that part, probably being a brother in general. Okay. It's a combination of watching, and I think there's an innate element to it too. So like even in college, we were founding fathers for a fraternity, and a lot of that structure was from a group of guys that a lot of them came from the same elementary and high school. So we applied a lot of our own kind of style of friendship and brotherhood to that, and we were applying it to people that were complete strangers coming into the fraternity and kind of leading them into what our brotherhood meant to each other, diversity.
So you had that leadership ability all the way from a young age,
I would say, yeah, from day one.
Are you the youngest?
I'm the oldest.
You're the oldest.
Oldest of 6. I have 4 sisters.
Would you say that has something to do with the leadership?
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. And obviously, seeing your dad, the way he sacrificed.
It just kind of passed on.
Yeah.
Innately.
You felt maybe that was kind of like, this is my responsibility. This is what I got to do.
Yeah, it's interesting. My father and I had some pretty tight conversation, like pretty grown-up conversations at a very young age. Like I remember I would when he was doing the coffee, like his time was like 4 a.m. I remember when it was summertime for me, I would go with him sometimes, and I'm catching a ride with him 4:30 in the morning, and on the way there, he's doing his prayers to his deceased parents, and then starts talking to me about his family, and that when I grow up, I gotta watch out for my sisters, and same as he's been doing for his family, and just wasn't like something hard for me to take on. Like, it's interesting because every time I've been involved in something serious, I've had people tell me, why are you doing this? This is not your responsibility. It's actually gonna affect me more if I'm not doing something about a problem that's in front of me. Or and I don't just sit there and maybe do a handout to solve a problem either. Like, what I like to do is equip people with tools so that the frequency of their problems might become less and less.
Right.
So spending, maybe in the beginning I was solving issues for siblings, but now I've been more empowering my siblings.
Teaching them how to do it.
Yeah. So what people didn't realize is, if you don't do that, and you try to escape from it, but as everyone gets older and the problems grow, you got bigger problems to deal with at an older age. I feel like by doing this, as we get older, I have less to worry about. Because now, for example, my youngest sister, Zana, she's 31. She's had a property management company spawn out of my construction lending, right? And this goes back to giving more services than asked for. When my clients, when I close a construction loan, I can leave, but a very important part of the construction is the phase funding. So there's a title rundown, tax search. The GC has to give you an organized Excel of the progress report. Invoices have to be ready, and the bank has to be on the same page. All these moving parts can end up making it 4 weeks to get paid every time the client is ready. My involvement, I orchestrate the whole thing from every request, and I'll get it done in about 5 days.
Oh,
right.
Okay.
The bank loves it because even though I'm not an employee of the bank, I'm an extra set of eyes and keeping all the mechanisms oiled up. Right. The client loves it because I didn't leave him the second he paid me, and now I'm also an extra. And most of my clients are not always on the site, right? So now I'm an extra set of eyes for them, and I also get to check the GCs. But the GCs end up liking me because I'm getting money to their pockets a lot faster.
It's a win-win.
So now all these different relationships are cross-collateralizing each other.
Right.
You're a
growing.
facilitator.
Yeah, and orchestrator, facilitator. So what's interesting is, I guess the ultimate goal, I want to be my own developer, right? My own landlord one day. But I could have done it 10 years ago maybe, and maybe been a 1% owner and been in the dark about a lot of things. By doing what I've been doing recently, it's giving me a vision, a very broad horizon of every element of what it takes to build a building, to lease it up, to manage it, to even the construction material, what they go through with the GCs. And I pretty much at this point can say I have a full spectrum of everything that has to do with putting a building together. And so even to the point of construction material. So I always want to find ways of doing more value add, right? But from doing that, then I can make more revenue. Sure. So I've been going to some construction expos. I went to one recently where out of 200 vendors and hundreds of products, the only thing that stood out to me was a window. Someone had a cutout of a window who's explaining, had 3 panes, and who's explaining all the different features of it in terms of its fiberglass versus PVC, triple pane versus double pane, the coefficiency of sound. So all of a sudden I'm learning about windows, right? And I'm like, it's a Turkish-owned company, but it's based out of Boston. The gentleman, it was Italian. He was a former general contractor. So for him to be selling this product, he must believe in it.
Sure.
So it stuck in my head. And, there's a lot of people today's time, like Turkey's kind of the new China, where people go to find vendors for material and kind of try to level off the higher costs in the U.S. But when you only meet 10 vendors, there's only so much you can figure out and bring here in savings. This group has gone through 400 manufacturers in Turkey. And to make a long story short, I was like, let me check them out. So I drove up to Boston a couple of months ago and got to see their showroom. It's open to the public. It's a high-end neighborhood, so actually people are there for their own individual homes, and they're selling for buildings. And I was working on a loan for a client of mine for a $8.5 million construction loan. We're towards the end of closing it. That client is the first client I did the large construction loan for about 3.5 years ago for $7 million. I stayed involved in the requisition. We went through all the struggles. We got it to the finish line. In that time, my sister was working in-house for developers on a larger scale as a lease-up. So I had my client bring my sister in to be doing his lease-up, and eventually they handed her the management of that building. Fast forward a couple years later, he's doing a 48-unit building, and while I'm out here in Boston, I'm checking out windows. At the same time, I'm working on underwriting his loan, and I'm like, send me your quote for your windows, your curtain wall, and everything else that has to do with the glass in the building, the patio doors, the glass balconies, and he had like a $550,000 quote. And I met the team over there. I came back, and then the owner of the company was visiting. He always goes out to Turkey to check on the manufacturing. Came into town and met with me, and I told him, I'm pretty deep in the game around here in finding opportunities for construction, funding construction, and I'm seeing the struggle with the interest rates. So if I can save clients money on material and it's better, then I want to add that as another way of making money.
Right.
And I told my clients, I was like, if I can give you a better product, save you money, I'm going to make money from it. I'm not doing it as a favor to you, bless it. Because some people might come back and say, I got you this product, it's cheaper, and it's better, and it's not going to harm the person if they get paid on the side, but I want them to know that I'm getting paid on it, and I want them to know that I may want to be one of the premier people in New Jersey for it. So now I'm adding a whole nother arm to it. And
awesome.
So you're growing organically out of all of this.
Within a week of that meeting, I had already sent my clients drawings. To that company to do the quotes for all the windows and the curtain wall and everything. So within that time frame, the quote came in.
So you took the initiative to say, okay, I need nice.
And they came back with I think it was like a $390,000 quote or whatever. And my client's like, oh, but I had like $400,000. I'm like, let me take a look at what they offered you. And then it was not. He missed the part where it was another $120,000 for the patio doors and the glass balconies. We ended up getting it done for him at $350,000.
Wow!
So saved him about $175,000 on that. And so immediately, talking about spreading it. I don't want to keep this just for myself. I'd rather have other people know about this.
Sure.
My client's interested now in finishing the entire building with their products, the flooring, the cabinets, so the building can become its own showroom for locals, right? Because they've done a lot of stuff up in Boston. And a lot of times people are concerned about taking business material in from overseas because there's no office here.
Right.
But Boston solves that issue by the fact that they have a location there. So we ended up signing that deal within a week. And this is just the beginning, in my opinion. Also, adding another way of countering what the lending and banking can do for me in the future, right? If it comes back and they pull it away for a couple of years, but there's still construction happening, then I have another avenue of business that's going forward. But the conversation with the company is, my interest is to be maybe exclusive one day for New Jersey, but I also want other people to make money from it. So I want the GC, if he can save money, that's fine. If there's someone that knows someone putting up 100 units and they can bring them to the table, I'm going to negotiate a higher payout from the supplier so that I can pay that person legally, 1099, have a nice day. But now I like it as an idea where other people can also benefit and make money.
So you only found this opportunity because you were involved, because it was so granular. Otherwise, it would have been a missed opportunity.
And through the years, everyone was like, for a broker, you're doing way more than you have to.
Right.
Go originate more business. Go get more deals. I'm like, yeah, but I want to get deeper in the trenches. I want that client to never think about anybody else but
Right.
Yeah, but that's you. That's what separates you from everybody else.
And now I can say, I probably have about 15 clients that I'd be shocked if they even spoke to another human being about lending, because I have their entire portfolio in my hands, their personal life information, their business information, and I've executed in every opportunity. So I don't just get you the construction loan, I'll find you a better perm loan than the construction lender offered you. So I'll give you an example. Client, the first one that we did, it was a $7 million loan. I think we used about 6.5 before we finished everything up. The bank thought there was a problem because we didn't take a draw for like 6 months, and they were in the middle of a reorg. And they called me up and they're like, we just want to make sure everything's all right. Well, yeah, everything's fine, but I just want to let you know we're going to pay off the loan, pay you the 1% exit fee, and we're going to another bank. Oh, why? Because while we were building this building, not one person from your company ever came and checked on us. And I'm looking for relationships for my clients. Right. So I don't think it was earned to continue to the next one. He's like, all right, do me a favor. He's like, I need these documents. We're getting audited, and I'd like if you can just give me updated rent roll as you're leasing up the building, and the financials of the client. I was like, I'll have that. He's like, can you give it to me by next week? I was like, I'll give it to you in an hour, because we're already preparing for
for the other.
So he liked the fact that we were organized as the banker, and to give him credit, he was very patient with what I said, because he was taking over a bunch of roles as the bank was reorganizing. So I said, now I need a favor. He's like, what? I'm like, even though I told you I'm exiting, I need a 2-month extension on your loan, so that with no fee while I work on the perm loan as we're exiting your bank. He's like, you know what? I'm going to ask for it. He calls me up a week later. He's like, I got you the extension for free, even though I told him we're leaving. He's like, but I'd like the chance to keep your business. I was like, come, let's meet me at the building and let's talk. So I had to meet the client. Guy walked in and was like, if he watches this one day, he walked in and he was like, I pictured a completely different body. I pictured a little bit of a chubster. He sounded in a certain way on the phone. He walked in, was like 6'4" Polish Superman.
It didn't match.
Really humble human being, a funny guy. His family, he doesn't need to work another day of his life, and he's one of the hardest working people in the game.
That's awesome.
And I told him my goal wasn't that I want to be able to transfer the loan into a perm, as the commitment had told us. I want my client to get valuation from day one based on the stabilized value, and I want to get, as long as it's debt serviced, I want to be able to get a cash out for my client. We ended up getting a $10.5 million loan.
Oh, wow.
Because my sister ended up reaching about 400 more per unit, on an annual basis with the number of units. That's $200,000 more of income for the client. But on a 5% cap, that turned into like another $4.5 million valuation. So we were able to pull out $3 million back to my client's pocket. So he ended up being almost like less than $1 million out of pocket on a building that's worth $17 million today. And he's cash flowing, and even with that debt, he's still kind of maybe clearing about $35 a month. That was my first construction, get it to perm, the full story, and it's being managed by my sister. And now we're 25% through the 48 unit being built. I just closed on his construction loan a couple weeks ago for $8.5 million, and my sister's earmarked to also lease up and manage that building as well.
So interesting.
And that's just one client.
Yeah, I was just going to say that, right? Interesting how all of this business is from one client that you're dealing with. And I think, I don't know, that the sense that I'm getting is that your natural curiosity to do more than just what is minimally required is really what's leading to all of this success.
Correct.
What would you say in terms of advice, I guess, that you can give to somebody? I mean, I think it's pretty obvious, but what would you say in terms of advice that you'd give somebody that is maybe is just thinking about getting started, or whether it's a small business or whether it's in your field or feels similar to yours? What advice would you give them?
I think number one is patience and perseverance. P&P, those two things are very important. You don't have those two things, don't even bother. Go get a job. It's very simple. Because it's a roller coaster ride, and things don't hit like these deals. And I walked out of Chase at the time. I was making $25,000 a month in commissions. I've never had a salary in my life, other than that temp job in when I first got out of college. But my brain was flatlining. So I'm like, is this what I really came for the rest of my life, just to continue doing this? Or
Right.
I've done my role here, time to expand to buildings maybe. It was a thought. Build a building, maybe sell a building or lend on a building. And within a year, I was out of the lending business in residential. And I basically flipped a couple of houses and started this commercial lending company. And it got scary for a while, because here I am in my late 30s, early 40s, and I'm trying to reestablish myself as an industry person when I was already doing well. But during that journey of redesigning my life and restructuring my business approach, now I'm worried about my next $20, because some of these deals might take 6 months.
Right.
Or it might take a year for the client to get his approval, another 6 months to get the drawings, and then another 6 months to get the loan. There's times where I'm talking to a client about an opportunity. By the time it got back into my hand and we got it closed, 3 years later.
Wow.
So patience and perseverance, for sure.
Those are key concepts, right? The patience and perseverance. I think a lot of times people give up too easily and too fast.
Yeah.
I really appreciate the fact that you mentioned that. We tend to learn those sort of things over time. So I'm glad that, certainly glad for you that you learned that from an early age.
Yeah.
And certainly glad that you're sharing that with us today.
It's an interesting challenge, because not everybody's going to take on a project that could potentially bring you some sort of commission or payout. So that's a really unique kind of
Trust me, you know how many times I'm looking at that bank account, it was like $500 in there, and I'm like, I look behind.
It's feast or famine.
And I'm telling myself, I'm
It
like,
is feast or
I could just
famine.
walk right back into residential lending and get to making $300,000-$400,000 a year, even if it's $200,000 a year. But it would not be with the gut wrenching element of everything I've been tasting for those couple of years of my transition. Plus, at the time, my father's business has been done. My parents have been retired. During this process, I actually rented a 2-story apartment to allow my parents to have a roof over their head, because my dad's business is done. They lost their home to a short sale, and I'm not going to tell my dad go find a job.
Right.
So while I'm transitioning, all this is happening too. So I had enough money set aside for housing, and I found a nice apartment with 2 floors overlooking New York City. I was like, if I'm going to put myself back for the first time in 20 years under the same roof as my family, it's got to have some kind of leisurely, items that I'm going to enjoy. So my goal was, the place is beautiful. It's got like a 50-foot balcony overlooking the city, floor-to-ceiling windows, but it's therapy for my mom. 'Cause my mom's been through a lot. We'll have that maybe on another sit-down.
Yeah.
In terms of the challenges of what you go through as a big brother with siblings and stuff. But my goal was get the business established, get to a point where I can go back and get my own apartment again, but continue paying for that apartment for my parents to stay there and leave it as my family's headquarters. There's like 2 extra bedrooms that are there. People, oh, you don't need that space. Well, I have sisters with kids. They visit. They want to sleep over. I have a sister in Chicago with 2 kids. I wanted to remain a family headquarter. So that was another aspect of it. So again, patience and perseverance, right? Like, do I want to be part of every conversation during those years where I'm trying to reestablish myself and I'm under the same roof? But it is what it is. And also, patience and perseverance, even after the market crashed, like I had blown out my knee, the banks went away, like everything crashed for me in 2007. I blew out my knee, the banks went down, I had to go through bankruptcy. I tried to keep the business open because we didn't think the banks were going to disappear. I went and borrowed more money to pay some of my staff employees to make sure they were going to be okay. And then during that time, I was one of the only loan officers still closing, but all that was going to the business loans.
Sounds like you've been through a lot, and I want to hear more about
You
the
need part
ups and
2.
downs. I was just going to say that.
Part 2.
Like, if you don't mind, I would, this is something that we do from time to time, the stories are interesting, and you have so much to offer. I really would love to sit down with you again. And
I would love to come back.
2. We've gone a little bit over the time that we have
Yeah.
today, but we could sit here for another 2-3 hours.
2-3 days, man. 2-3 days.
But
It's a long, short life.
I was going to say, but this is a Prosperando show, not the Joe Rogan show. So we don't do 3
Hey,
hour
I'm bold
podcasts.
though, so that call it Mo Rogan.
Mo Rogan. I
Mo
like
Rogan.
that.
What I'd love to do is extend that invitation. Hopefully we get together
I'll be
again
honored to
and-
come back.
Thank you.
This
I
is a good
appreciate
warm up.
it. Hey, listen, for me, I don't know, for you, Tanya, although I think I know, this was a very, very interesting conversation.
Absolutely. There's lots of room for part 2, for sure.
And again, you're definitely welcome to come back. But I like to always leave the show by saying, look, where there's in roughly translating from Spanish to English, right? Where there's a will, there's a way,
Yeah.
It
100%.
to what you're saying, it requires a lot of determination. It also requires for you to educate yourself. And it also requires for you to just get up in the morning and say to yourself, yes, I'm going to do this. But where there's a will, there's a way.
Yeah.
And like the name of the show says, it's about prospering. It's about moving forward. If you like the show today, if you like the conversation we had today, don't forget to give it a like. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. If you haven't done so yet, please go to the website, losradio.com. Download the application, and then you'll find our show there. We bring you these topics, these conversations every week to talk a little bit about everything in terms of finances, because like the name of the show says, we want to prosper.
And now in English.
And now in English. Thank you.